please do start.
Thank you, Dr. Filippo. Good morning, everyone. Good morning from Athens. And let me start by thanking the Football Collective by giving me the opportunity to present here, and thank its organizing committee too. Now, let's start right away with analyzing the title of this presentation that's called Football and the Working Classes in 19th Century England. I hope you're listening to me well. I hope you're seeing the slide. And we start by saying that football is the sport, the modern sport that we all know, love, and study. The working classes consist of every single member of the working class that was formed as a ramification of the Industrial Revolution. And you may ask, why 19th century England? Well, because there and then, in 1863, to be more exact, the first football association in the world was established. We have answered rapidly the first four questions: what, who, where, and when. And the goal of this presentation will be to answer the remaining two: how and why the workers came to be so interested in football. As I'm talking, you'll be seeing some footage of football from the start of the 20th century. It's the earliest footage we have from football in England, and as a result, some of the earliest footage that we have from football globally. So let's state the three prerequisites that were needed for workers to be interested in football. At first, they needed to know what the sport was. And this was made possible because street football has been surviving in cities and countryside alike, and also modern sport has been flourishing in public schools. Secondly, they needed time to play and watch it, and time was given to them by Factory Act of 1850. This freed the morning of Saturdays, the afternoons of Saturdays, and gave the workers a day and a half of consecutive rest. The weekends would be labeled as football days since they offered the necessary free time for football activities. Lastly, they needed money. And money was accumulated because during and after the Industrial Revolution, wages went up while the cost of living went down. How did the workers came to be so much interested in football? Well, they did that firstly as players. As you may have seen in the English game of Netflix, despite some historical inaccuracies, the most characteristic example is that of Blackburn Olympic in 1983, which won the FA Cup against Old Etonians. Up until the end of the 19th century, no other team than working class teams would go on to win the FA Cup. Now, the second part of support of workers in the football network was that of fans. They cheered on the stadiums, they went to the football fields to support the team, and as you may see now on the video, there was a group of mostly male, mainly between 16 and 39 years old, and you may notice that women are not there. I'll come back to that. So, what we see also is a stadium, and this is a period of time that has iconic stadiums be built, like White Hart Lane for Tottenham in London, Stamford Bridge in London also for Chelsea, and Anfield in Liverpool for Everton. This has been a move by owners to maximize their profits, since gate receipts were very important. So another move in this direction was, was to transform the teams from playing to limited liability companies. And these companies were supported by the workers. They rushed to give money to them because they had formed a strong emotional bond with them already, even it was just a few years. So, as you may understand, money was all around, and yet it was in the epicenter. It was in the epicenter of the newly founded football network that consisted of newspapers, pubs, betting, and all these things that make the scene sound a little too familiar nowadays. The national domination of football would be graced by the Royal English family in 1914, as the King, George V, watched himself the FA Cup final and delivered personally the trophy to the winning team's captain. Now, the King is here, so you may understand that the situation is getting serious. And in fact, The first reason that pushed workers towards football was a socio-political one. We have entered the era of socialism, communism, labor movement, and syndicalism. And these big words are frightening to the upper classes. They are frightening to aristocrats and middle classers alike. So they present football to society, aka the workers, as a lesson of hierarchy, of morals, and fair play. They want to socially control the workers through it. Yet, they couldn't control the spontaneous wave that rose because of them, because the workers found in football a way of achieving better social status and, naturally, increasing their incomes. We do know that footballers were getting better paid than the average industrial workers. Now that we have seen the bigger picture, we may move our focus to the average working man of this era. During the 19th century, living and working conditions of the working class had its ups and downs, but their common denominator was that they weren't that good. Workers were miserable, were poor, and were pessimistic about the future. So that's why the average worker turned into football, because it may be a sport, but it always remains a game. And as a game, even in its commercialized form, it serves and fulfills a primitive and absolutely human need, and that is to have fun. Not only does this need get fulfilled individually, but also in groups. When a worker shares his passion about football with men who share this common interest with him, he enters a leisure community. And this may happen even in rivalries, even when argumenting about a fan of a rival team, and we do know that English has many derbies like that, Wednesday versus Sheffield versus United in Sheffield, City versus United in Manchester, and all that stuff. He's amplifying his sense of belonging in a community. So this is very important because football offers psychological relief. The last dimension that I must mention is that of gender. The thing is that men chose football because they were men, and this may sound like a vague phrase, but it does have an explanation. Firstly, sports were stereotypically and traditionally male because they were violent, and therefore deemed unsuitable for women. Secondly, nationalism came to be the prevalent ideology in this period of time in England. Jingoism, as it was called for healthy and fit soldiers to bolster the ranks of English troops. As a result, football was seen not only as entertainment, but also as a form of training for England's future soldiers. Last but not least, I must say something about women too, as I have promised already. Women wanted to play football, and they did. We have entered the era of suffragettes, feminism, and another batch of scary words for men. So, men were scared of that, and they sought isolation from football. They wanted to preserve their masculinity. They wanted to escape their houses, escape the pressure that was coming from them. So, while they did want to isolate themselves, they did not manage to do that, as we do know that in 1895, the first all-female game happened in London between London ladies, among London ladies. So, as the video is coming to an end, as the presentation is coming to an end, I would like to summarize by saying that this whole project has been under the wings of social history. It has been an attempt to combine different aspects of history, like the working classes, gender, society, politics, and this has been my selected bibliography because this has been my master's thesis. And I would like to end this presentation by stating that the final point that I would like to be made, the take-home message, if you like, would be what David Goldblatt has written in his book, The Ball is Round, The Global History of Football, that no history of the modern world can be written without an account of football. Thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to ask me anything. I hope I know how to answer.
Thanks, Joe.